It starts as a rumble, but gains in volume until you can't hear yourself think. The ground shakes and you begin to lose your grip. Is it an avalanche? Of course not. It's the Indie Spotlight Lightning Round. Guest, what's your name?
Hi, my name's Laurie O'Connell.
What are your pronouns, Laurie?
I use he, him.
Where do you live, King?
So I live in London in the United Kingdom.
Cool. What kind of creative are you?
I would consider myself to be a writer more than a game designer, but I do write games.
Cool. Welcome, Laurie. Nice to have you here. So, who is on your team for the game that we're going to? Oh, I forgot to ask. What is your project that we're talking about today?
So the project that we're talking about today is a game called Full Send, which is a game about climbing mountains that uses tarot cards. I'm sure we'll talk about some other projects in the meantime, but that's the main one.
Yep. And who is on your team for this project?
So I am of course the main writer on the project and I'm managing it. But I also have a couple of really talented people on the project. So um I have Kayla Dice who runs the Ratwave Game House.
Mm-hmm.
Um Ratwave.uk if anyone wants to look her up. She's a fantastic writer. She's written a lot of games like one of my favorites is To Embrace a Swamp Creature. She's written a game called Psycho Dungeon, and she's done a lot of the art on Full Send. We also have Samantha Lee from Blinking Birch Games, who's the creator of Anamnesis, who's very experienced in tarot games in particular. So they're going to be editing my project. And I've also asked a few friends to help with the layout and photography and so on. So it's a big team.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds cool, and I really like what I've seen of the game so far from the materials that you sent me. So let's talk about full send real quick. First of all, what does that mean? What does full send mean?
So full send is kind of a colloquialism that means to succeed at something. But it comes from climbing lingo, right? So
Gotcha.
when you send something, when you climb it, it means you succeed, you complete the climb. Um, so it's it's an expression that comes from climbing, and the reason why I chose it is obviously it's a pun. You can die in this game, and I like to pun full send into fool's end. Uh, and I
Okay.
find it to be quite a funny little title for a game.
I had not caught on to that. So thank you for pointing that out. With that,
It's okay.
I'm gonna be pulling up some of the arcana to show to the folks as
Mm,
we're going. I'll start with the fool after you said that. Um, yeah. Okay.
yes,
No.
so Kayla designed from Ratwave Game House. She designed all of the arcana for the cards.
Cool. Here we go. Yeah, we got this bearded dude with kind of a nutty look in his eyes. With oh yeah, he's got the fool arcana in his goggles too. I see that.
Yeah, we based a lot of the Rider Waite deck, but trying to kind of integrate it in interesting ways.
Mm-hmm.
So with the reflections, or sometimes we'd have a little part of the card in, the sun or the moon, or reflected on the mountainside or something,
Mm-hmm.
just to
Yeah.
keep it kind of not derivative, but still linked to the inspiration.
Very cool. I like this. I like this guy's look. I can definitely see him as the even though he's a gray beard. As the young person setting out in an adventure. He's got that spark in his eye. So
Mm.
I guess my first question is why a TTRPG about mountaineering? What was the impetus behind that? What do you see as like the significance of it?
I think I'm the kind of writer that really enjoys a challenge. Um, And one of the challenges I find is interesting genre emulation. So if I watch a show or I watch a documentary or something like that, and I know that it's popular and people are interested in that genre, I'm always thinking, oh, how do I make that a role-playing game? How do I make this something that people can actually play in and with, and create mechanics and create writing at that links to it. So I've done that with some of my other projects. My last project was kind of an attempt to really emulate the death game genre and solve a lot of mechanical problems relating to that genre. Um, and this one is in mountaineering and mountain climbing is interesting because it's always been a topic of great fascination. Not just climbing, but in general exploration, right?
Yeah.
But for hundreds and hundreds of years, for thousands of years, people have been fascinated by these kind of unreachable places in the earth and the physical and the mental challenges and the tolls that people go through to get to them. Um, and it's a link of how do you achieve an expedition like that? Well, teamwork, personal qualities, resources, skill, luck, and all these other sorts of things. So I thought this would be a really interesting topic for a TTRPG. And the next question is how precisely to emulate that, right? How precisely to create those kinds of documentaries and books about climbing that I love to consume in an RPG.
Cool. So, oh, here's a question then. You've not done any mountaineering, have you, or have you? I don't know. Do you like hiking
So
and outdoorsy kinds of things?
I am quite an outdoorsy person, which I've been told is rare for an RPG person. I don't know if that's fair or not. Um,
Well, they do tend to be kind
but
of indoor cats, right?
yeah. I don't know. I know a lot of people that like a random sport, but it's always a very niche sport that they're into. Um, but I do love to hike and go on. In terms of actually big mountain climbing, that's not really my thing. I like to climb, but I climb in an indoor gym. I
Okay.
like to go bouldering and things like that. But climbing culture is something that really fascinates me. And I'm very keen. Um, I'm very keen on just a hike, and I'm keen on a ski as well. So,
Cool.
that's all context that I bring to the table, I suppose.
Okay. And let me just skip to this question then. What did so if you're fascinated with the culture, what did research for this game look like for you?
Well, I have, I guess, embarrassingly collected a huge amount of books about mountaineering and so on over the years. In the UK as well, there's this really great supplier called, God, I forget what it's called. It's called something like mountainbooks.co.uk. You mean
Okay.
it's probably not that, but there's a guy that basically just collects a huge amount of vintage books or out of print books about climbing, and you can just go on his website and it's just a treasure trove. And so I have in my house, all of these stories, and I just always have read them. It's been a bit of a comfort read for me to read about like a climbing disaster or something like that, even though it's a little bit dark.
Sure.
Um, and so I had a lot of the research already there, pouring back through those books because I also wanted to copy a little bit of the format of those books as well as like as well as use the content in the game.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's also obviously there's a lot of very popular climbing documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of things like Free Solo, things like Touching the Void. Um,
Which made it
but
into the game as a concept too.
yes, it did make it into the game. But I was also very interested in kind of like the personalities and the lives and the drama, like the home drama of climbers, particularly famous climbers. And I really stumbled across a couple of documentaries on Disney Plus, one that's called Torn, um, which I really, really recommend. I don't want to reveal all of what happens in it, but if you want to see a really messy personal climbing story, definitely give that a watch.
I think we'd
Um,
all enjoy that a little bit, right?
yeah, and that made that into the game as well. So yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into the game itself. I wanted to talk about the tarot deck. And so, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looked like the major arcana are used to create the mountain itself.
Mhm.
And the players will be climbing and using the lesser arcana for taking tricks and gaining points in that way.
Mhm.
So, what was the inspiration for, marrying the tarot deck to the game?
So I use a lot of tarot decks in my games. I've already published two games that use tarot
Okay.
cards. Um, and Kayla's also my partner slash collaborator on this game, has also published several decks that several games that use tarot cards as well. So we're both big fans of it. I think firstly, in terms of making it a card-based game, it simply makes sense for the kind of tactical depth that I wanted to bring to the game to use
Hmm.
cards instead of dice, because it provides a lot more kind of like variation in how a resolution can go, and it makes creating something that's competitive but also has both competitive and teamwork elements a little bit easier. With dice, it's very much more of a like win-lose condition, and it just doesn't quite work for what I wanted to do. Um, so I knew it was going to be a card game. I knew it was going to be a trick-taking game. Because I wanted to take inspiration from a lot of the games that I like to play.
Yeah.
Um, so then I was kind of deciding how to like whether to use a regular deck of cards or whether to use a tarot deck, and there are a few things that really stand out about the tarot deck. Firstly, it's a little bit bigger. There are more cards.
Yep.
Um, so a game can last longer. You can have more draw conditions and so on, and you can have more players.
Hmm.
Um, so that is actually a kind of just like a really boring, like mechanical consideration, if you like. More cards equals potentially a more flexible game.
No, it's
Um,
insightful. It helps us understand
yeah,
why go for the one. So.
yeah. But secondly, also people like tarot cards are more visual, and when you're looking at things like procedural generation, which is what we're doing with the Major Arcana for the mountains. Effectively, it's a mode of procedural generation where you're creating all the different obstacles on a mountain. Um, a lot of games do this using rollable tables, right? Roll a d20 to find out what's in this cupboard, roll a d20 to find out how many monsters there are in this, or roll a d4. That's fine.
Hmm.
I've never really got on with it because I don't read that quickly and I don't like to like search for things in tables. When you draw a
Okay.
card and there's an image on it which is really evocative and you can immediately start to see, oh, I know what this card is. I know what this represents. I can start to create a story. Having that visual element is so useful for a game master or a facilitator. So that's another thing that I think really um brings in the tarot. I'll say though, I mean, I don't want to go on too long. Tarot does have limitations as well because you have to respect the kind of origin and the meaning of the cards. So
Yeah.
you can't just write whatever you would want for a prompt. So it gives some guidelines, but it also gives some limitations on what kinds of prompts and generations you can have.
Yeah. Absolutely. So here's a question that I just considered that I hadn't looked up earlier. What is there like a particular arcana or major arcana that if you flip it over, you're like, oh shit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the higher the number, the more difficult it is
Okay.
in the game, in the mechanics of the game. because you need to beat the number on the major arcana cards from the cards that you have in your hand. So if you flip over like the world or judgment or anything in
Mm-hmm.
that level, um, you're gonna find it difficult. It's gonna be a dangerous prompt. It's gonna potentially be, I mean, you've got ways to mitigate it, but it's gonna potentially be deadly. Um, there is some major arcana, which this is one of those things where you're trying to balance the vibe of the tarot cards with the mechanics of the game. There are some major arcana that are really high up there in number. I'm thinking like the Star, for example, which is
Yeah.
in the 20s, I think, if I recall correctly. Um, but they're just objectively, if you were just looking, if you were just reading a tarot deck, drawing the Star would be an objectively really good card.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very positive card. It's a celestial card. It's kind of a very sort of hopeful card to draw, very creative card. So then I had to kind of balance those things. So I've made some cards like that. Yes, they're difficult challenges, but they also come with kind of like bonuses or good things to balance that out and to sort of respect the origin of the card a little bit. But yeah, anything up there in the high numbers, if you draw it, you're like, oh dear, that's not very good.
Okay, well, careful of those worlds and judgments, folks, as you
Mhm.
are flipping over the cards in your mountain. Um, so let's talk about we've been talking about the mechanical aspects, but let's talk
Mhm.
about some of the role playing aspects. So
Mhm.
one of the things here is that each of the characters chooses relationships and bonds with like NPCs that they make up and with other player
Mhm.
characters. So, would you like to talk about how that works a little bit?
Yeah, so the relationship system in Full Send is actually a very kind of like mechanical system, um, where you choose your relationships right at the start of the game. And you start with a small number of relationships and you need to invest in kind of like building them and growing them. So outside of the mountains, there's a downtime section which is much more free form role play, and it's really an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to kind of like build up your characters and explore what really makes them tick throughout various role play scenes. Um, and it's there that you really get the opportunity, if you so choose, to invest in your relationships. Now, the reason why there's a relationship system in the game, there's two systems for downtime or outside of the climbing system that are very intricate. The first one is relationships, and the second one is the debt and income system, mainly
Okay.
the debt system. And the reason for that is money and relationships are the two pressures on people's lives um in the modern world. And I wanted to, this is an RPG that's set in the real world, and I wanted to really explore how someone who is a climber, who is spending so much time away from home, who is probably not making a huge amount of money, um, how does that impact on their ability to explore and enjoy their hobby? Um, and does this kind of like need to go off and do these death-defying um sense, does that impact on their relationships with their friends, with their family, and so on? And if so, what way? So that's why those systems exist. But of course, having good relationships is very mechanically beneficial as well, because at a certain point, when you run out of your luck, which is, I suppose, your main health bar, um, your relationships become your sort of secret second health
Mm-hmm.
pool. Um,
Yeah, will
which
it was will,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
will to survive, which is represented by all of the relationships that you still have. So you want to invest in them and maintain them.
Yep, they'll help you get through those tough spots on the mountain, folks. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Well, on the topic of, obviously mountaineering, very dangerous for people that do it. Even if you're trying to, summit Everest with like an experienced climber or somebody, it's still very dangerous. I'm reminded of the Rainbow Valley where
Mm-hmm.
lots of people have died, and there's just like no way to airlift their bodies out. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, in your game, how likely is that a given player character is going to die in a campaign?
Um, I suppose it depends how long the campaign goes on.
Yeah.
Um, Death is really integrated into the mechanics of the game and it's
Mm-hmm.
expected. And there are certain long-term metas that only really make sense if you expect your character to die. Like,
Mm.
you can develop your character by getting them into a ton of debt on the understanding that your character is probably going to die before they have to pay it off. That's a legitimate strategy in the game. Um,
Oh
that
man.
several people have used in the playtest, and they're like, is this kind of hacking the game a bit? And I'm like, no, you can do this in real life too. It's a legitimate strategy in the game. But it's yeah, it's easy to get yourself into situations where you run out of luck and then you're in real trouble. Um, and once you fail to beat a couple of obstacles, it's very easy to happen. Maybe you draw a bad hand, maybe someone
Mm-hmm.
else screws you over. You can find yourself in a position where very quickly things go from seemingly fine to really not okay, and you're in a position where your life could be at risk. And the point is, that's how these things work. That is how these kind of like mountaineering expeditions work. If you get injured and you're somewhere where no one can help you, it could be an accident, but suddenly, that could be it for you. And I wanted to emulate that in a way that felt interesting and didn't just feel like, oh, you failed on your dice roll and therefore now you have to die, which is why
Yeah.
there's a card game instead.
That makes a lot of sense. It would be pretty anticlimactic to need to roll high on one of those high level arcana, and then suddenly you have three climbers just die or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So, you mentioned that there's a competitive aspect to the game as well, which I wouldn't have
Hmm.
expected at first because it seems like there would be no particular reason not for all the characters to work together, right? Because if they don't,
Hmm.
they may all die.
Mm.
So where's that competitive aspect come in?
So so the reason why there's a competitive aspect is because that truly is the nature of sport. Like,
Okay.
Um, and if you really look at climbing, unfortunately, there's a lot of like personality and there's a lot of kind of machismo to it.
Mm.
And this is what every single exploration or anything ever, you always have this was the first man to get to the South Pole. This was the first man to get to the top of Everest. This was the first woman to climb all seven of the, of whatever.
Yeah.
First woman to go across the world. That is the way that people are kind of trained to think about these things. And
Mm.
regardless of if you think that that's a good thing or a bad thing, I actually think it's a really kind of corrosive thing, particularly in climbing, where you have people that just get so crazy about being the first that they really neglect the safety of each other. However, that is an aspect I wanted to emulate that. And you also obviously have the influence of capitalism as well, right? The
Sure.
fact that ultimately you have a small, small number of professional climbers, and in order to keep doing what they love, they have to earn sponsorships. They have to get paid. They have to get a documentary, a film crew, whatever. So, and to do that, you've got to be the one that is the most prominent one on the group, right? You've got to be
Yeah.
the star. So that's kind of the main, I suppose, contradiction, the main contradictory mechanic of the game is that as you're playing this summit, you're trying to beat the obstacles with the cards that you play from your hand, not from anyone else's hand, from your hand alone. And you're trying to beat everyone else, the number of cards that they play from their hand as well. So you're incentivized in a way to get your poker face on, to not reveal too much, to to try and make your own way up. On the other hand, it's a role-playing game. You constantly have to interact with the other characters. And there are very serious downsides to one person not making it up to the top of the mountain. If someone doesn't make it up, everyone loses out. So you're kind of trying to balance between helping only yourself and helping everyone else. That's the contradiction of the game. That's the mechanic that I think is really fun to play with.
Yeah. Okay. So, I guess the moral there is to choose the people that you play with carefully, right?
Mm,
um,
I suppose, yeah, I guess like I wouldn't think that way necessarily. It's
well,
it's to it's to, yeah, it is that, but it's also to try and encourage people to think you are playing an RPG, but you're not playing an RPG that is just purely an RPG.
sure,
Sometimes think about elements of it as more like a card game. Like think about elements of it as more like a board game. Because if when you're playing a card game, you're not, when you play a game of Uno, you don't get mad if you lose a
right.
game of Uno, right? So, you know, I think that part of developing RPGs and bringing in all of these influences from card gaming and board gaming and so on is perhaps encouraging people to of let go of some of the prejudices about what a role-playing table needs to look like.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's definitely there's definitely an interesting. There's a lot of interest to the way that this game shapes up, I think.
Hmm.
Um, so, sort of on that topic, we know you can't really in a TTRPG you can't really win per se, right? But is there
Hmm.
like would you say there's a win condition in Full Send? If there was, what would it be?
Um, if you do really well, you can make your character really famous and then retire them.
Okay,
But I think that's quite a narratively boring choice because the point about like if you really if you consume this media, something that you come to realize is that the people that do this, the people that climb these in these extremely dangerous circumstances, they're not doing it just for like the money and the fame or whatever. That's something that they get just so that they can keep doing the thing that they love, regardless
yeah,
of how dangerous it is. And you could have a family, you could have a wife, you could have kids, you could have money, but ultimately if your hobby is something that is extremely dangerous and you can't give it up, the most likely outcome is eventually it kills you. And
yeah.
that's the story of pretty much every very famous alpinist and climber in history. Um, and I don't know if it's a tragic one or not, if it's just the kind of like reality of the way that these people live their lives.
It is. It's interesting, It's and that's hard. You're right. It is hard to say if they've lived true to themselves or if the greater good is being there for your loved ones, right?
Mm.
Interesting to consider. So this game is currently on Kickstarter. Isn't that not so?
Yes, it is. It
Okay.
is, yes.
When as we're talking, it's only been up there for a couple days, right?
Yep. Since Wednesday, so 4-ish days.
Gotcha. And your goal is what?
So I don't know what it is in dollars, but it's 4.5 in British pounds, 4,500. Which is a high goal, but it's a high production value game. And we're about 75% of the way now, which I'm dead pleased with. So yeah, we'll see how we go with the rest of the campaign. We've got a couple more weeks left.
You do, and of course you're going to reap the benefits of people coming in towards the end. Though we kind of know how this bell curve um,
Mm.
for for Kickstarters goes. But folks, if you're seeing this right now, you're going to find a link in the show description where you can go and support a great indie dev, Laurie here at doing what they are he does best over on Kickstarter. So go check that out for sure. But not only have you done full send or getting it
Mm.
done here, but you have a catalog, a portfolio of games that you previously have done. So what else have you made?
So gosh, I've done quite a lot to, if I'm totally honest with you. Um, so I've had two tarot powered games that are available on my itch. Both of them, one called To Honor and Obey, which is an Arthurian wife simulator,
Oh,
where
okay,
you kind of play as this Arthurian noblewoman who's been abandoned by her knight husband. And another one called The Witch of the Westmoreland. I've got a game called Hieronymus, which is a game that uses the artwork of Hieronymus Bosch. I've got a game called Death Game, which is like a Hunger Games Squid Game simulator. That's a really fantastic game, actually, if I do say so myself. It utilizes a rotating GM, so whenever your character dies, you actually become the GM, and the GM makes a new character. So it makes character death like really, really fun and engaging, actually. I've got a game called Lichcraft, which a lot of people might have heard of. Um, yeah, I've got a whole bunch of stuff actually. I've been writing games for a while now, and I'm really
yeah,
pleased. I'm really
and
pleased with pleased.
yeah, I mean, a lot of those sound pretty fun to me. Like Death
Mm.
Game for sure, and I remember seeing like the quick start for that when it was up on was there like a quick start up on Blue Sky at one point, or am I making that up?
It's possible. N No, I didn't have a quick start for Death
Okay.
Game.
Okay, well, I saw something. I know I saw something that made it look like a lot of fun. It had a lot of random elements, like random weapons and random mazes. Is that right?
It does have random weapons. You might be thinking of Deathmatch Island, which is a different
Okay.
game. But
Okay.
still a good game, but it does a different thing. It kind of plays with the genre, doesn't really integrate PvP or character death in the way that I tried to do in Death Game, but does have a good like generation system for kind of like the islands and the games and things like that.
Gotcha. So, with all these games, is there like a particular thread that you see, whether it be in like mechanical or narrative, that you see going through, like like almost like more than half dozen games that you have made up to this point?
Yeah, I would say it's about kind of like unpacking the different systems that humans interact with, different institutions. So whether it's marriage, whether it's like poverty and like capitalism and violence, the sort of violence of poverty, which was really explored in Death Game and with the Death
Yeah,
Game genre. Um, Whether it's this like cycle of like competition and passion that I'm really trying to explore in Full Send, what drives people to engage in these like very dangerous activities. Everything that I do is really about, yeah, these systems and how you kind of like resist or contradict or work to undermine them. Um, so yeah, I'm very interested in that in my game design. And the other thing I think, which is kind of the boring way of saying the thing that I just said, is that I'm very interested in genre emulation. Um, I like to take something, a genre that people engage with, whether it's a specific type of film or TV show, or whether it's yeah, and
Yeah.
try to figure out why people are interested in it, and then do a game that's not just emulating that genre in a really boring way, but it's emulating what I think the thing that people are interested in when they engage with that genre is.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So trying to get to the core of the idea.
yeah, the essence of something. That's what I'm interested in.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think that this is definitely a game worth checking out. Full Send or any of your other things. If you viewer are interested in really getting to the core of a genre, definitely check into what the other things that Laurie has created. So let me ask you, where can people find your games?
So you can find my stuff on itch.io. That's where all of my published games are. So it's Laurie O'Connell.itch.io. But there's only one L on the end of O'Connell, and I always have to say this because everyone always spells it wrong. Um, you can
Okay.
also find me at 12pinspress.com. So 12 Pins Press is the name of my publishing imprint. And obviously you can find me on Kickstarter at the moment, and always, and on Blue Sky and other boring social media, Instagram, if you want to follow me there
Cool.
at 12 pins.
Well, all of those links, folks, will be in the show notes. So make sure to give them a click, check out what Laurie's up to. And in any case, Laurie, thank you so much for being here. Are there any thoughts that you would like to leave the good people with?
Um, yeah, maybe obviously I do actually want to say something about crowdfunding a game at the moment, which is that like times are very, very tough for people. It's not a time when people have a lot of money to spend on like frivolities and things like that. And there's a huge amount of really shit, terrible stuff going on in the world.
Mm,
And therefore, it feels very surreal to be like kind of crowdfunding a game and talking about that. Um, and I dedicate a lot of my time when I'm not on social media to doing anything except that, right?
sure.
I'm very politically active and so on. But art is important. I do believe that. And although I don't necessarily feel entitled to people's money when there's so much going on and times are so tough, I feel very grateful when people decide to support what I do. And I really appreciate it. So, because I know that what I make is always good quality and always has a lot of thought and time put into it. So if you do decide to support my game, like do it with that in mind, that I really appreciate it and I understand the other pressures that exist. And it means a lot that some people decide to support my work anyway.
Cool. Thank you for that, Laurie. Viewer, thank you for watching this episode of Indie Spotlight. And make sure to follow and support Full Send, now on Kickstarter. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.